10 books that software engineers need to read. So we both have software engineering backgrounds. I used to be a software engineer, specifically in the video game space. Now, for the past 2 years, I've been a speed reading and memory coach, helping CEOs and their companies read faster, read more. And I noticed that I had to develop so many more skills, right? So today we'll give you book recommendations, how to remember more of what you read, and how to read a book a week, even if you have a 9 to 5 and no time to read. And I'm here with Dima. Dima and I met at my house party. What was it, 6 months ago?
It was, it was more than a year ago.
More than a year ago. So Dima worked with me to increase his reading speed, comprehension, and he's been reading more ever since. And I've watched this guy grow so much. Even, what was it, a couple weeks ago, you got interviewed on a podcast by Millionaire, right?
Yeah, the Millionaire. His name is Heath. This guy from Arizona. He owned several businesses. One of them, he had a business in truck industry, but he sold it to Red Bull company, and now he became a multimillionaire. And now he has another business in the same industry, and he's super successful. And I met him at the Volt event in West Palm in Florida. It was in September this year, 2024, and he was really interested in me, and he invited me to talk on his podcast about my story, how I got to States, and what my plans in the future, all these things. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Dima. And one thing that I've noticed with Dima, where he's leveled up, is he's not just doing his 9 to 5 job, he's actively looking to solve problems, spotting more opportunities, expanding his vocabulary, because English is his second language, yet he's still reading these books. So a couple things from the software engineer's perspective is there are skills you would need to develop to get out of the rat race of software engineering, because if you're like us, you don't want to code for the rest of your life. So here are some of the topics and skills you need to develop, and then we'll talk about books that would supplement these skills you need to build, and then Dima will share his story a little bit. So I'd say sales, leadership, marketing, systems of business. You already understand the systems of coding. You already understand the systems within JavaScript, all these algorithms, right? But there's so much more. People skills, in-person networking, and emotional intelligence. All of these can be engineered. And when I was a software engineer, I was like, okay, what skills does the software CEO have that I do not have? And if we look at Elon, we look at Dan Martell, we look at Zuckerberg, they have a reading habit. They turn their brain into a walking chat GPT with a larger data set than most software engineers. That's how I see it. So Dima, if you can go ahead and share your story with everybody. I think it's fascinating. I think you got a great story, man.
Well, that's actually a long story, but long story short, 2 years ago, I was living in Belarus, in Minsk. It's East Europe, country in East Europe, next to Ukraine and Russia. And when I was a software engineer at some point, I learned the software engineering by myself because I was passionate about that. And when the war started, I realized I gotta get out of here. Otherwise, my future family won't have any bright future in this country. I was lucky enough, I got a work visa, and I got here, Austin, Texas, in October 2022. And I changed the company. I did a visa transfer because my first company has crashed. And there was like a short story behind that. When my first company was Russian speaking company, and I didn't speak English at all. And when company crashed, I had 2 months to figure it out to make a visa transfer. Otherwise, I had to go back to my country. And long story short, I learned English in 2 days. I prepared for an interview in 2 days. And I've been hired, and I did a visa transfer, and I'm getting a green card next year. There's more details behind that, but in this short interview, I'd like to share these things.
Dude, That's amazing. And another thing that Dima didn't share was that he had post-its all over his apartment, learning just enough English to be able to pass the interview, because he got the interview, but he didn't have enough time to prepare and learn all this English, because the first company said you don't need to learn English even though you're in the United States. We all speak Russian, right? So that's under immense pressure, diamonds form. That's what I always talk about. So before I share my book recommendations that I've seen millionaires request from me that I work with, that they say, even though they're making 50 million in revenue, they've got hundreds of employees, and they really realize that me working in the business, them working in the business, isn't going to provide as much leverage or growth as them working on themselves, reading more books. So Dima, if you could share a couple of your top books that you think software engineers should read to help them break out.
Uh, well, the first thing I want to say is there is a gap between software engineering and being like self-employed, to be entrepreneur, and like as I feel, the main mission of the man to get man's freedom back. Not, I don't want to stuck in my rat race, 9 to 5 job. Be, I want to be where I want, do what I want for as long as I want. And to get here, there is a gap between being a software engineer working 9 to 5 to be the person I want to be. And in order to close this gap, you have to gain more knowledge. And one of the best source of knowledge are books, right? And yes, I do my top 5 books. I'd like to recommend to anyone who wants to grow and make 2025 the life-changing year in your lives. So, number 1 book I would recommend is "Buy Back Your Time" by Dan Martell. Number 1 book teaches like everything, how to manage your times and how to delegate, how to hire the right person for the right position, and the most important, the like first hire you have to do. You'll read in the book, but the book teaches first hire. What you have to do is to hire someone who will take care of your like emails and calendar. Start with it. There is like buyback rate, all the stuff you'll find in the books. Number 1 in my list. I'm still reading it. It's like my workbook. I read all the time. The same thing I can say about the 100 million offer by Alex Hormozy. This is actually book number 2. Top. It could be number 1, I can say. But it's very important. Also workbook. I read all the time. There's many notes I made from this book. Yeah. Number 3, I could say "Don't Believe Everything You Think." It's a book written by our friend Joseph, who lives in Orlando, Florida. Short read. You can like read it in one day, but it teaches very important concepts of how to, yeah, thank you, how to think properly, how to organize your thoughts, and that we are creating our reality by our thoughts, and this book will help you create everything you want. Just short summary. uh, 4th book is 48 Laws of Power. And book number 5, I would recommend. This could be a hard read for the people who has English as a second language. Name of the book: Power versus Force. Talks about map of consciousness. Yeah, it's really hard to describe what this book is about, but very important. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening. This is like my top 5.
Did we do 5 or is that 4?
I did 5.
5 or
yeah,
4?
yeah, I said 5. I think.
Buy Back Your Time, $100 million offers, Don't Believe Everything You Think. Power versus Force. Did you want to do Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself? Is that one? Or which one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Breaking habit of being. This is like the I finished the Davis. Davis has a speed reading course, and when I started, first first read was um,
It's a tough read. Yeah.
yeah,
It's very dense, but it's really good.
breaking habit of being yourself. Super important. My background also, I'm a chemical engineer. I have a bachelor degree, and this book talks about the energy, like atoms, electrons, and how everything works in our world. This book should be number zero in my list. I forgot about it. I still read it. Also, it talks.
We should do a book club on that book.
Yeah,
Get
yeah,
a group and
100%.
review it because it's that good.
Yes, it talks. You actually able to create your own reality by thinking and embodying the feelings. I have so much to say about this book, but I want to keep you excited. Just grab it and read it. It will change your life, I promise.
Perfect. So I wrote down because I've read these books too, and they're so good. And then I'll give you more book recommendations. But the one that Dima brought up was Power versus Force by David R. Hawkins, and I'll elaborate on why this book is important. It talks about the maps of consciousness, and when you're stuck in fear, you're stuck in scarcity, you're below what he labels 200 levels. So he gives each level of consciousness a number. So if you're below 200, you might be in emotions that hold you back. So what is your state of consciousness? Well, look at Jesus Christ. Look at these people that actually have tons of energy. They're in states of consciousness much higher than people in survival states. Okay, and I found this book so fascinating. I memorized all 17 different levels of consciousness because we start with shame. Break out of shame as much as you can. Okay, if you're going to take anything from that book, don't let yourself be in shame. Number 2, guilt, the second lowest level of consciousness. Break away from guilt as much as you can. All right, and then 3 is apathy, and then 4 is grief. I won't break into the rest, but again, there's 17 different levels, and that book also talks about what actually makes a genius. Okay, so genius is not just a logical knowledge. Logical knowledge only takes you so far. Emotional intelligence is the next thing. So emotional intelligence is like, I tell software engineers, a bundle of algorithms that are complex. There's a lot of gray area, but social intelligence means like, how good is your empathy? How good is your intuition? How good is your reading of people? How good is your reading of understanding people? And now we get into human psychology. Okay, so that's that book. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza is amazing because for the scientific mind like you, that book breaks down at the atomic level what people mean by manifestation, what they mean by affirmations and things like that. And me, so I'm a Christian, I'll share my faith. Those are gifts that God gives you, being able to manifest, have these affirmations. But my belief is that you should build your relationship with God first, and then you get those secondary gifts. Okay, I'll do a separate video about all that, but I find that important. Okay, so that book paired with the Bible, you'll learn a lot. You also talked about Don't Believe Everything You Think, which was this book. If you feel like you overthink a lot or you procrastinate, you also need to know that just because a thought pops up in your head doesn't mean you need to give any truth to it. That's what that book talks about. Just because it's in your head, don't overthink, don't turn thoughts into thinking. Thoughts in your head are just like clouds. Okay.
I can give a real quick example what I learned from this book. Let's say you conceived to write a book about environment, let's say, and great idea. It evaluates your emotions, and you want to start writing the book like right now, but in a few hours when you keep driving like back your home, you start to think about it again, and you'll make up all the reasons why you cannot do it. And this book teaches you get rid of the thoughts because they're unrelevant, they're not important. The most important that you want to write this book unreasonably, and yeah, very important.
Thank you for sharing. So, Dima brought up a book that my business is built upon. If you ever want to create products or offers that people will pay money for, it's $100 million offers by Alex Hormozy. So that book helped me double, triple, quadruple, 5 times X, 10X my prices with my business. I started at $0 just helping people for free. But then I learned as soon as I got laid off from my software engineering business, to be sustainable, people do need to pay. So if you have difficulty getting people to pay and it makes you feel bad, read that book because you will feel better about charging. Okay, there are all these things you could do. There are guarantees, there are testimonials. Just go help as many people as possible for free, and then you will have the conviction and confidence to charge. So Alex Ramosi says, if it's hard for you to charge people, build up a stack of evidence so great that people are like, of course I would pay you. They feel safe.
Yeah,
Okay.
build big slam offer. How it calls it basically. Think about your product to make it so good, so the competence will be irrelevant in your niche. It gives them many examples, like in this book he talks
Like
about
weight loss.
Yeah, he talks about the software engineering company. They made the offer for their customers so good they won't be able to resist. But also he raised the price, and he was able to charge this price for customers because wasn't anything similar in the market. Very good book.
Good.
I'm building a business right now. I want to share with you about it just yet because it's in a development stage. But I'll try to implement some of the concepts from the book in my business, and I'll share with you about results in the next episode of this podcast.
Perfect. So the last book you brought up, and I'll talk about some of my recommendations, and I'll be fast. Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, who's $100 million CEO that made a lot of his money in software. All right, I think he made his first $1 million potentially in his mid-20s. Okay, so he talks about the power of reading. He's read over 1,200 books, and he says it's not just like the one book or couple books that gets you successful. It's about getting in the rhythm and the habit of consuming knowledge. All right, and that's what got him to where he is today. All right, then he talks about the replacement ladder, and I believe the order is at the bottom, admin stuff. Next, I believe it was HR, maybe. Then it's sales, marketing, and leadership. Okay, sales is complex, marketing is complex, and so is leadership, but those can be passed off, but you need to build that skill of delegation, and I've seen Dima improve his skills of delegation. So let's talk about books that I'd recommend just based on the skills you need alone. Sales, I'd recommend Sell or Be Sold, Secrets of Question-Based Selling, Socratic Selling. Jeremy Miner has a great book, The New Model of Selling, so you don't feel salesy. There is a way to sell without feeling like you're a car salesman, okay? But you need to consume the knowledge and build the vocabulary to be able to do that, okay? And then let's talk about leadership. Power versus Force could help you be a good leader. There's also 360-Degree Leader, John Maxwell. There's also all of Patrick Lencioni's books are really good, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. All right, but in order to be a good leader, first you need to be a good leader for yourself. So a lot of people watching this, you might be a one-man shop. So can you lead yourself? And do you even have a mentor that you talk to weekly to develop your business and have someone as a sounding board? Okay, so in software engineering, they talk about rubber ducking, which is talking about your code out loud to someone, or at least typing it out. And then in that process, you usually solve the software engineering solution. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, when you mentioned book, can we make for our viewers just for the cover to pop up on the screen so
Yeah,
they can
we can.
pause and read?
We'll put it in the description, all the books in the description.
Yeah, or something like this.
Yeah,
for
we'll
them
do
to
that.
be much easier to get the title.
Yeah. And then in terms of marketing, This is Marketing by Seth Godin is great, and Positioning by Al Reese and Jack Trout. They're also really good copywriting books because you need to be a good writer. All right, and then in terms of psychology, I would start with any psychology book that excites you. But influence, any book by Robert B. Cialdini, pick it up and read it, because those books are centered around psychology that helps you in business. You don't need
What then is psychology?
when I mean human psychology, it's like, okay, all the different archetypes of people. How do relationships work? I'd read Nonviolent Communication and Crucial Conversations if you want to improve your communication. All right, systems, there's Traction, and then there's the book Scaling Up. But only really read those books if you already have a proven business model, you're making sales, maybe you even have some employees, and you feel like you're too repeated. At the end of the day, I said sales first for a reason. Sales is the blood of any business, and you don't need to go even start the LLC. Get some sales first, then you can do all the other stuff. Other stuff is just procrastination.
That was my mistake. I
Yeah.
opened the LLC first, but what could you do when you don't have any sales?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's fine. Look, you learned. And then last thing is networking. The Little Black Book of Connections. Great book. Can you get out there and shake hands? Meet people. All these things are so important.
the one of the book you mentioned earlier with me called Work the Room.
How to Work a Room.
Could you
Susan
say-
Rohn.
I haven't read this. Could you say a few words about it?
Yeah, so that book talks about just like physical tactics and some mindset approaches you could have that will help you approach groups of strangers. Because here's the premise that she says with that book is that if you guys are all under the same roof, that is enough in common that you have to go approach these people and talk to them. Okay? And that's it for the video. Thanks for listening. And if you're a software engineer and you're trying to grow, feel free to comment because we both will respond and talk to you because we want to help.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. I'll see you in the next episode of this podcast.
Later.